Okay, we need to talk. For those already following this channel or having watched the previous video, you're going to be like, oh my god, a new video already? 2 weeks from the previous one? Is that a Christmas miracle? I don't think so. I mean, maybe. Who knows? No, I went on a Jack the Ripper walk tour on Halloween and I wasn't planning on doing a video about it because I didn't think it would be that interesting or, it would bring anything to this channel. But doing it, I had kind of something didn't sit quite well and I felt the need of doing this video. So buckle up, buttercup, because it's not probably going to be a comfortable one. We're going to address some topics that are probably not super comfortable for everyone, but I feel like they need to be addressed. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Palmyre, I'm French, I have a French cat called Sherlock and we both moved here 6 years ago. This channel is a channel about Jack the Ripper where we talk about the different suspects, the different murders, we get into the depth, or we talk about the different books about Jack the Ripper. It's quite a fairly new channel, so we haven't had time to really address everything for now. This time, I wanted to address something that came up to me while doing the tour. This is not going to be like a video with research or anything. This is probably going to just be a rant about what happened during the tour and the things that kind of, it just not seems right when we talk about Jack the Ripper or true crime in general. So yeah, this is the video. It's going to talk about what the fuck is our unhealthy fascination for true crime, or here the Jack the Ripper case, or Whitechapel Murders. And we're going to talk about the misogynistic and classist treatment of the victims. So yeah, it's going to be, I think, quite an interesting video, but it's just not based on facts, it's just based on how I feel and what I noticed during the tour. So first of all, my apologies if I sound a bit sick or whatever. I got my booster jab yesterday and it's kind of kicking my ass right now, so I'm a bit feverish even though I'm wearing a bodysuit as a top. It's not the best feeling, my arm hurts and I've been feeling a bit flu-y. But we needed to do that video now. I want to start by saying that I didn't have a lot of expectations from that tour. It was mainly to do something on Halloween with my best friend and just do something a bit spooky ooky to kind of say, oh, we've done something for Halloween. It was also nice for me to take someone on a tour with me so that I could talk with them about what happened, the Whitechapel murders and everything. I didn't have a lot of expectation. I didn't think that tour would blow me away. I found the tour while doing my research on Frederick Deming and I was like, well, it could be nice to do a tour, just see what it is. But that's where I started thinking about it. Why do we make murders an attraction for Halloween? Why do people want to see places where people have been murdered for entertainment? Why? Why do we like the gore and the macabre so much that we want to walk the steps of the murderer and the victims? I mean, with that tour, it wasn't even the victims, it was mainly the murderer. And why are we so fascinated by that? Why do we dehumanize the victim because we're fascinated by the pictures of the gory murders? It was a lot of questions. The tour was packed. There were so many people, it was not even fun or interesting to interact with the tour guide. The tour guide knew a lot. Fair play. To remember all the dates and everything. But the way he talked about the murders, he was really being super dramatic and really acting the thing. He was saying oh yeah, she was cut from here to here, making a lot of noise, the big gesture so that everyone could see, and it was just making it a farce. People have died, actual women have been killed. Here, while you're talking and you're just making it a farce or an attraction by doing it like that and being so dramatic and theatrical that it doesn't really make it serious. We kind of forget the seriousness of the murders and the gruesomeness of it by the way he was describing it. There was also a problem with the fact that he was describing a lot of the geographical places. He was explaining this building was still there, there was a rows of houses behind and blah blah blah, but there was no clear talk about the victims' lives. It was just, here she died, that happened, like that. That's what was said during the inquiry, and that's it. He spent more time talking about the suspects at the end of the tour when I had given up and I was petting a black cat than talking about each victims. Things like that quite didn't sit well, but made me wonder what is it that, not only for the Whitechapel murders, but for true crime in general, why are we so fascinated by them? Is it the fact that we don't understand how can someone get to kill someone? How someone can get to kill someone that way and that many people? What's happening in their mind? There's still a fascination that is always towards, and an interest towards, the murderers, as if they're the big star of the whole thing, and the victim are just like an accessory, a prop, or details of the story. They're just here. Their murders mean more than the victims themselves. Even if it's a killer that we don't even know who he is, for Jack, the fact that we don't know who he is makes him that much of a big deal. But like, it's the same for the Zodiac killer. We were all trying to understand who he was, and now we know who he is. But like, it's the same for all the big serial killer, Ted Bundy and all the others. Like, we have a fascination for them. We want to know what's in their brain. We kind of romanticize some of them or fancy them, but we don't give the same interest to the victim. The victims are really on the side, and their lives don't really matter. It's their murder, yes. We care about the murder, we like the murder, we want to know the murder, we want to see the pictures, but we don't really care about what happened to them to lead them to that murder, or what happened in their lives. We forget that they were actual people, and that's a problem that I have, and I put the blame on myself too here, because I started being fascinated by Jack the Ripper because of the whole thing of not knowing who he was and the gruesomeness of the murders. I didn't really pay attention too much to the victims. Like, I loved the whole thing as a whole, but I can't never explain why. It fascinates me that a man, because Jill the Ripper is not so much of a good theory, I think, but that a man can kill like that without being caught, and we don't know why he did it. And I loved the gruesomeness. I loved the pictures. Like, I would watch the picture and be like, ooh. The first two we did Martha Tabrams, then we didn't do Polinicals. We did it, but not at her spots because it's too far. Then we did Hanbury Street, and it was exciting for me to see those spots where the murders have happened. And it was just like, oh my god, I was excited. People were like, ooh, something's wrong with her. But I was like, oh my god, I'm seeing the spots where they were killed, and I kind of like, the victims were a second thought. Like, I didn't really care. I was more interested about the details of the murders, the fact that we didn't find him, and it was just like really exciting to see the spots. And I blame myself for that. It's not just pointing the fingers at people being like, you bad people. We're all guilty of that. Or it takes us time to educate ourselves and move from the perspective of being like, oh my god, that killer is so cool, I love him, to, oh wow, this is really actually sad what happened to the victims. They lost their lives. Like, it's really sad. And I feel like I need to do more research about it, and I'll probably do another video where we talk about what attracts us into true crimes and murders, and why we're so fascinated by murderers. Is it because they're doing something that we can't do, that we can't fathom, taking someone's life, so we're just, oh wow. I don't know, it's a weird one. And you know, even though the victims I didn't really care that much, I always felt like a connection with them. The way we dehumanize them, and this is where we get to the second point of the video, is that there is such a misogynistic and classist, because they were poor, so definitely there's a classist treatment of the victims. And that goes back to the previous video where I talked about that sentence at the end of the Ripperologists saying that Frederick Deeming couldn't be Jack the Ripper because Jack didn't stoop so low as to killing kids. He only killed world-weary prostitutes. And it just felt like there's a worth on their lives. They have no value, they have no worth. Like, they were just prostitutes, because we know now, and if you've watched those videos, you know by now that only 2 of them were actual prostitutes or sex workers, and even if they were, it doesn't justify the murder. But we lack compassion for them because of everything that was said about them. Like, they were worthless. They were on the street. They were prostitutes. They were alcoholic. They had no family left, or almost none, because we barely talk about their lives. We don't talk about their family, we don't talk about their friends, we don't say if they had friends, if they had love interest, and it's kind of like killing them a second time. And I'm going to get really emotional right now because it hurts so much that we reduce them to just how they died and the fact that they're dead, because there was so much more than that. Catherine Eddowes, everyone knew her. She was singing all the time. And all of them had, like, Mary Jane Kelly, we're not sure about her name because she had to flee trafficking. She was trafficked to France and she fled that. And she came back to the UK and she had to hide her identity to not be found by these people. And I'm sorry, I got really emotional here, but I think that we're killing them a second time by finding them worthless because of classist and misogynistic treatment and view of the murders. They were prostitutes, they were on the street, they were alcoholic. For Annie Chapman, the guide tour and most of the books say that she was so sick that she would have died even if she hadn't been killed on that night. She would have died a few weeks after because she was so sick. But if you read the 5, the last hours of her life are just really sad. She was so sick that she tried to find somewhere to sleep, and where she finds somewhere, she got murdered. She didn't go there with a client, and even if, like, she deserved more respect from us, and there's a treatment of, like, promiscuity, and it's the same for Elizabeth Short. We kind of, like, sensationalized the victim, being like, oh well, yeah, Elizabeth Short, maybe she was a lesbian, maybe she was sleeping around to get her way to the top in Hollywood, to make it more like she kind of deserved what happened to her, even though she didn't. But by making a point of, like, pointing out the fact that those women were on the street, they were worthless because their lives had no values anymore. I remember that for one of the victims, they also said that she robbed her employer, to kind of like being like, oh well, look at them, they're not great people. Who cares? No one does, great things all their lives. Like, I've done stuff that I'm not proud of, but no one's perfect. It's just really disrespectful. The guide tour did something that really hurt me on that night. He did multiple things that really hurt me. And it's coming from someone who, at the beginning, I was like, show me the bodies, show me the picture of them dead. I want to see what they look like. This is interesting. This is what matters to me. I want to see that. Oh my god, this is exciting. He did that with her guts. He removed that part of her body. Oh my god, he cut her face. He cut her nose. Oh wow, she didn't have any breast left. Oh look, you can see the bone on that picture. Yes, I was attracted to that. But I feel like there's a way of addressing the murders and the whole Jack the Ripper case. I know that people are going to say, well, it's an attraction. What were you expecting? It was Halloween, you wanted to do a tour. It's an attraction. Of course, the guide tour is going to show the people what they want. But he made us walk so much in places that he could have placed the victims there. He made such an effort at placing and making us look at the streets as if it was Victorian London. He took us to some really small alleyways to make us feel how it felt during that time. He took us sightseeing by the Gherkin, showing us that tomb of that Roman girl that has nothing to do with Jack the Ripper at all. And with that time, he could have talked about the victims in 5 minutes, even though it's really short and they deserve way better than that. He could have explained what led them to their murders, what happened in their lives, how someone can go from being a child, being married and having children, to being on the street and being killed by a maniac. It was not hard, and it would have brought humanity to that tour that just felt like a money-making machine. And it was easy for him to try to make it more human instead of just, he just showed the picture. And that's the problem I had with that tour guide, is that he had no pictures of them alive. He was bragging about the fact that for Catherine Eddowes, he had a picture that no one had seen before. And that it was the picture of her on her way to the morgue, or before getting to the morgue. So you could see the deep cut on her throat. You could see things coming out of her stomach. But he didn't have any picture of them alive. And it's easy to find. You just Google the name and you can find pictures. The fact that he just reduced them, diminished them to a corpse on a picture and a murder, and being like, that's what she looked like. For Liz Tridy was like, look, you can see the cut on her neck. And the part that really made me angry during the tour, it's when he tried to make it sound like he cared about the victims. So he was saying like, oh, I'm going to show you pictures, this is going to be graphic if you don't want to watch, blah blah blah. And then he was saying again, like bragging about the fact that the picture that he had of Catherine Eddowes, no one had seen it before, blah blah blah. And when he showed the picture of Catherine Eddowes, if you've watched the previous video, you remember that they put her against a wall at the morgue so that she looked like standing up, even though she's dead, but it was easier to take the picture. He was trying to be like, oh, look at how skinny she was. Like, it clearly tells you that these people didn't eat that well. They really lived a life of struggle. Let's not forget that these were actual persons. Like, Catherine Eddowes had a husband and 3 children. And I was like, okay, you could have told her story. You could have told her last night and how she said to the cop when she left the police station, "Good night, old cock." Like, it just makes her human and makes you feel things for her. It's the same for all victims. He tried to be nice and he tried to be like, let's not forget they were human beings. And then he went, oh, by the way, if you want to take a picture where Catherine Eddowes was found, because that's exactly where she was found, I'll give you some time. And I was like, really, bitch? Are you really going to do that? At that moment, my heart dropped and I went, what? I looked at my best friend Camilla and I was like, no, he did not say that, right? He did not, no, he can't have done that. Just being like, take a picture. It's as if take a selfie where someone was killed, it's cool. And I mean, he didn't do that with the other victims because he didn't stop where the other victims were killed. We did George Yard, but he didn't talk about Martha Abrams. When he took us on 29 Hanbury Street for Annie Chapman, there was another group of Jack the Ripper tour on 29, so he took us on 33, said that didn't really matter to see the place because the place doesn't really exist, and that we should look at across the street because the buildings across the streets are what 29 Hanbury Street looked like at the time. So again, there was not a real time for everyone to take a picture of 29 Hanbury Street. And then he took us on Dorset Street and it doesn't exist anymore too, so you can't really take a picture of that. Because he didn't take us to the actual spots for all the victims, he only took us for one, Catherine Eddowes. That's probably why he offered to take a picture at that moment. But it really rubbed me the wrong way and I was done with the tour at that moment. And I was like, how can people be like, oh wow, this is so cool, I'm going to take a picture. I do take pictures. Again, I'm not going to say I'm all white on that thing. When I walk around the spots, I take pictures of the spots, but it's more as in you, the people that watch this or the people that follow me on Instagram know that I know things about Jack the Ripper. Some people kind of want me to show them the spots, and it's easier to show those spots than being like, well, she lived here, because they lived very different places, because lodging house. So when I take a picture, it's as an educational way, being like, when you walk there, please be mindful, this is where she was found, pay respect to her. But the way he said it during the tour and the way it was just being like, yeah, take a selfie where someone was killed, it's just... And that's probably the problem I have with the Jack the Ripper tour in general, is that it's an attraction. The murder is the main attraction. The murderer is the main attraction. The victims, no, it's an afterthought. Yeah, we say their name, that's cool. But, you know, they were just prostitutes. Who cares? Who cares who they were? Who cares who they loved? Who cares what they loved? There's things that you learn about the victims that makes you like them or not like them. They were human beings. Like Elizabeth tried. The beginning of her story is always really sad, and then by the end you're kind of like, nah, I don't really like you. Not that you want her dead though. Absolutely not. And not that it justifies the murder. Absolutely not. It's just by knowing them, you realize that they were humans and that they were worthy of living and worthy of existing and worthy of being mentioned now as part of the whole thing. If you want to make it an attraction, make it an attraction, but make it make sense. Make it relevant. Make it cover everything. So this is just a side note. I know, recorded from my headphones. Pretty bad. But I was thinking about that just now. The Jack the Ripper Museum, even though it's pretty controversial, they did a better job at trying to humanize the victims. So basically, before it opened, it pretended to be a museum about the women of East End. And when it opened, surprise, surprise, it was Jack the Ripper. So people were pretty pissed off because it was once more someone trying to monetize the murders. The museum doesn't really bother me. I mean, there's tools. I don't know why a museum is worse than the tools. So it's separated on different floors. So you've got the first floor, it's Bugs Row. So it just shows how it was on the street when Polly Nichols was found. Then the second floor is the police station. Third floor is what Jack the Ripper's flat could have looked like. It's based on nothing, but still interesting to see. And then the top floor is Mary Jane Kelly's room, and it tells more about lodging poor people. You've got like one frame on the wall with each victims, and it's a long text telling their stories. And in that room you can hear the song that Mary Jane Kelly was heard singing on the night of her murder. It feels really emotional when you're in that room because you're hearing that song being sang by the female voice, so you kind of feel like it could be Mary Jane Kelly, and it's really emotional. You get into that room, it looks like her room or a room in lodging, and it tells their story. I feel like you learn more from the museum than the tour. It's really nice because you've got the time to read, you've got that song, you're in that room that looks like a lodging room, you kind of feel the vibe, and it's really well done. And you don't have pictures of them dead yet. You don't see them dead until you go to the mortuary in the basement. So it's a choice. You don't have to go there if you don't want to. If you choose to go to the mortuary, this is where you're going to see the pictures of them dead. It's a choice. You choose. It's not the guide showing you these pictures. The pictures that are on the frame of each of their story is of them alive. You know, we can say what we want about the museum, say that, you know, they kind of like lied, but that is still better than what was done during the tour, and I feel it's more respectful. The museum, even though it has its controversies, still respect the victims more than the tour, because you see pictures of them alive, you know about their lives, and you choose to see them dead or not. It's a choice, and it doesn't base the museum on the murders. The murders are on the stairs, and you can choose to read about the murders or not, and it's not detailed because it's only extracts of newspapers that are like just printed on the walls. That's it. The museum is better. Just to say it like that, it's better. Treats the victim with more respect. It doesn't dehumanize them because you can put a face on the victims and an alive face, not a dead one, and it's not based around the murders. It's based around the case. So yeah, that's all I had to say. The tour started at 7:30 and finished at 9:15. So you've got enough time to cover their lives. If you don't make us walk different ways to just be like, oh look, sightseeing, and you just stayed at the spots. And if you want to not take people to all the places, you take them to relevant places that are in the area. So when you were at Flower and Dean Street, you could have talked about their lives. You could have explained who they were. You could have made like a 15-minute talk about who they were, each victim. Not when taking us to the places where they were killed, but taking us to the places where they lived. When he was explaining the living condition at the time, he could have explained, this is what happened to people in Whitechapel. The victims, this is what happened to them. This is their lives. They didn't grow up in poverty. They didn't start their life being homeless. This is the path. This is their life story. This is why they went from working in Windsor and cleaning houses in Windsor to being on the street that night and being killed. You can make a tour entertaining but educative at the same time and more respectful of the victim by taking the time to do your work and talk about them. Talk about who they were, explain what happened to them. It's not that hard. Oh, I emailed them the next day. I didn't have high expectations, but this is way worse than what I was thinking it would be. I was not thinking there would be that many people, and he said that it's the busiest night with Valentine's Day, which again, really creepy. What the fuck is wrong with us as human beings that we find murders fascinating and entertaining, that on Valentine's Day, let's go for a Jack the Ripper walk tour? What is wrong with us? Why? Why do we have that unhealthy fascination where we put the murder on the pedestal, being like, oh my god, but the victims, we don't consider them, or we don't acknowledge them, or we don't care. We just care about the murder, the cops, and the murderer, and that's it. They're an afterthought, if they're even a thought. So I didn't have high expectation from that tour, but it was just really bad. But it made me think, doing that tour, made me think in general why we love documentaries documentaries about serial killers, why we love watching videos like Bailey Cyan because it talks about murderers and murders, and we're just kind of fascinated about it. And why is the murder always the star of the story and not the victims? I mean, sometimes it's respectful of their family. I know that I've watched some Bailey Cyan's videos, and she said that the family didn't want her to mention the name of the victims, which fair. It just made me realize and think about myself, how I treat this whole Whitechapel Murders myself. And this channel, am I doing it the right way? Is it respectful? It made me think about a lot of things like, am I wrong? Am I right in doing this? And why do we like the gore and the gruesome and the pictures of the corpse more than the picture of what they look like alive? Why we don't really care about knowing what they were like alive? Because I don't think the people on the tour really cared. I think they were like, oh yeah, cool, I'm doing something for Halloween, this is spooky, woohoo, Jack the Ripper, oh, he's going to come and kill us. We're going to see the spots where the bodies were found. What's the interest? Why? Why do we make such an interest around murders and people losing their lives? Why, as human beings, we're just so fascinated about it, and we watch hours of documentaries about serial killer. We have a favorite serial killer for some of us. We have theories, we fantasize, some have crushes. It's weird. Like, serial killer, that guy killed people, but like, okay, cool. And yeah, why victims, we care so little about them? Why we just like, oh yeah, that murder is cool, but not, oh, that victim is cool. I feel like we need to shift that fascination and interest for the gruesome and the murder and everything to something that is more respectful to the victim. And I think that Bailey Cyan does something that is good because she's really respectful of the victim, and she shows pictures of them alive, and she tells their story when she can, when she have the information. But in general, Jack the Ripper book tours, they just vomit the facts of the murders. They tell you the different suspects and show you the spots, but there's no care about the victim. And I think that we need to shift that. And I will need to look more into why we're so fascinated about the gore and the gruesome, because that could be a really cool future, deeper conversation to have on this channel, to see why we like that so much and why the murderer is the star more than the victim. I think for now we reached the end of that video. If you made it that far, thank you so much for watching. If you have anything to say, if you just want to let me know how you feel about the whole thing, you can leave a comment in the comment section. We can have a discussion about what would be the best way. Am I just delusional, having expectation that it wouldn't be such a touristic attraction? Just let me know what you think in the comments. That could be nice to have a conversation about it. I don't know when the next video will be, because that one is sooner than it should have been. I was planning on doing one about a tour, but it wasn't supposed to be that one, and I wasn't supposed to do a video that soon about that. I had plans on doing the From Hell video, but I had so much to say after that tour that this is why this video is here. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to subscribe. If you want to like this video, you can like it. I think this is probably the first time I'm saying that on my videos. It feels really weird. I feel like it's going to be a bit shallow if I'm like, oh, look at my Halloween nails, but also look at my Halloween nails, they're cute. Sorry for that shallow moment. Anyway, until next time, have fun, live life, enjoy yourself, and I'll see you soon. Bye!